Welcome back everybody to the Davis Method video series on the White Mountains Triathlon. Today we're going to be specifically talking about the sprint distance triathlon on June 23rd, 2018, starting at 10:15 in the morning. The distances are going to be a quarter-mile swim, a 7.25 mile bike, and a 2.88 mile run, in that order. So for those of you who are just getting into triathlon, who are beginners, it is going to be your traditional triathlon, a swim, bike, and run. Swimming a quarter mile, one loop. Swimming a bike of 7.2 miles, also one loop. And running 2.88 miles, again, one loop. So there'll be no out and backs, no big areas for you to get lost or anything like that. This is a very straightforward, beginner-friendly race, so we're super excited to have you and help you out through your entire day. Alright? This video is going to talk a little bit about the transition area. Talk about when you should arrive, where you can get your packets, what you might find in your packets, what to expect for the swim, for the bike course, and for the run course, and just how to approach your day in general. Alright? In the description you'll be able to find a button to click on a specific time for when we start talking about the swim in general, when we start talking about the bike, and when we talk about the run. So if you're looking for information on one of those three disciplines specifically, feel free to go into the description right now and click on that, or you can always use those buttons later if you want to re-watch a certain section without having to kind of flip through the entire video. You can just click right at that specific time. Okay? So, what to expect for race weekend? Well, this year, this half, the Olympic and the sprint, will all be going off on Saturday, June 23rd. There will be, on June 22nd, Friday, a summit experience where you'll be at the top of the summit if you choose to go, where you'll be able to talk to myself. I'll be doing a brief conversation with people, doing a kind of frequently asked questions and things like that, just getting people's nerves to relax a little bit the night before the race, just to have some final questions answered and whatnot. And there'll be some food and drink to enjoy while you can talk to other competitors and whatnot and see what their experiences have been in the past, how their training is going, and things like that. Just so the race day comes around, you'll have some familiar faces, and it's just a really good time. Plus the views at the top of Cannon Mountain are always spectacular, so it's a good experience to go to. Also on Friday from 4:30 to 6 p.m. there will be a packet pickup available at the Tramway Lodge, which is right where you'll be going up to the top of the summit should you choose to do that at the social. It is a good idea, in my opinion, to get your packet the night before. That way you can go through all of your stuff without having to be kind of in the trunk of your car, or if there's any kind of inclement weather, having to worry about putting stickers on your bike or your helmet or whatnot in the rain. You can do that all in your hotel room or wherever you're staying. So 4:30 to 6 p.m. at the Tramway Lodge on Friday the 22nd is when you would want to grab your packet if you can pick it up then. If not, you can get it 5:30 to 8:30 a.m. at the Peabody Lodge, which is going to be near the finish of the race on the race morning. So that'll be a little bit early for you sprinters because your race doesn't start until 10:15. But if you're coming up the day of, then obviously that's your only option, so just make sure you get there before 8:30. Okay? So typically inside of your packet, your race packet, you're going to find your run number, which you're going to either pin on to your uniform or use a race belt, but we'll talk about that later. You'll find a bike number that you're going to stick to your bike, and again, we're going to have a transition video where we'll talk specifically about where you might want to put the number. But there will be a number specifically for your bike, that way you don't have to wear your run number throughout the entire race. There might be a couple goodies. Sometimes people throw in a goo or a Cliff Bar or something of that nature, and your swim cap. And your swim cap is typically colored to designate which wave you're in. So make sure that you see what color cap you are when the person is giving you the bag, and then note what time that wave might be going off. If there are multiple waves, the sprint might start at 10:15, but your wave might not go off until 10:20. So just pay attention to those kinds of things, and if it is really cold, maybe bring your own swim cap to put on and then put the race cap over it. That way you get a little bit of extra warmth. It's just a minor tip for you there. Okay, so that's your packet. You've got your swim cap, your bike number, your race number, and maybe some pins. If they don't have pins, make sure you bring some. Always have a race belt. In my opinion, it's much easier and much quicker. It's just you have your number on it and you can clip it to you instead of having to worry about pinning things onto your uniform or things like that. Okay? So, like I said, packet pickup 4:30 to 6 the night before or 5:30 to 8:30 the morning of. Also at 5:30, transition area will open on the 23rd, Saturday, the morning of the race, and it will close 20 minutes before each race. So it's going to be closed for the half distance competitors at 6:40 a.m. because they need to then be at the beach for their race meeting and whatnot for their 7 a.m. start. It's going to close at 8:10 a.m. for the Olympic distance racers because their race starts at 8:30. And for those of you competing in the sprint distance, it'll be at 9:55 closing because your race starts at 10:15. Okay? There'll be a separate in and out for you to get in and out of transition so that you don't have to worry about going in and out of the swim entrance or in and out of the bike out and bike in entrance. I'll throw a graphic up there so you don't have to worry about trying to visualize it. It's pretty easy to understand once you see it. There'll be a different racking area for the sprint distance, the half distance, and the Olympic distance so that nobody is kind of stepping all over each other's toes. So it's going to be a really smooth transition area. I'm really happy with the way that they're putting it together this year. It should be really easy to kind of get through, manipulate, and whatnot. It's also not that big of a transition area, and everything is in an open parking lot, so it's very easy to see where you're going to enter from the swim, where you're going to exit on the bike, enter on the bike, and exit on the run. So transition area should be very stress-free, and if you have any questions, feel free to come up to me while I'm in transition area or anybody else volunteering on the day so that you can get any questions answered. But like I said, everything is labeled very well at this race, and it's a very open parking lot, so you shouldn't have any issues. Okay? Awesome. Now, moving on to the actual race. At 10 a.m., there will be a race meeting down by the beach, and your race starts at 10:15. Now, that 10 a.m. meeting is mandatory. It's very important that you show up to that because there's going to be information that will be given by the race director or whoever is running this section of the day, and that information is going to be the last-minute changes that have happened. So if there's anything that's changed due to weather, due to the course, anything at all, whatever they can come up with or think of, that's when they're going to give you that information. So if you're not at that meeting and something changes that could directly impact your race, well then that's nobody's fault but your own, and we don't want anybody to have a bad day, so we want to make sure that you're all getting the proper information. So just be at that meeting, even if you're kind of still warming up, moving around, like doing some high knees or whatever, shaking your arms out while you're listening. Just make sure that you can hear the race director as they're talking because that information is really important. It's the last bit of stuff that you're going to get before you start your day. Okay? Now, how exactly should we start our day for a swim, bike, and run? A lot of you this may be your first triathlon. Hopefully it's not the first time that you're swimming, biking, or running, but if it is, good for you. It should be a really interesting day for you, and it should be a lot of fun. So I recommend that you do warm up before doing a triathlon, no matter what distance you're doing. And personally, I think it's a good idea to do a little bit of each discipline. And by a little bit, I mean a very little bit. 2 to 5 minutes running around, making sure your shoes feel okay, making sure you got the right pair of socks that you want, that your laces are at the right tightness. And then after that, jumping on your bike, going through all of your gears, feeling your tires to make sure the pressure is good. Just switching through all your gears, pedaling pretty quickly, keeping a high cadence, and that's how many repetitions you have as you go around. So spinning your legs pretty fast, getting the blood flowing a little bit, and then swinging back into the transition area. Make sure that if you are warming up on your bike that you're wearing a helmet. It's always a rule within triathlon that whether you're competing or before or after your competition, if you're on the race site, you have to have your helmet buckled and on when you're on your bike. Okay? Just a little aside there. And then the last thing you're going to do is get your wetsuit on, which we'll have a video to show you the best practices to get the wetsuit on and off. So you'll take some time to get that on. Ideally, by probably 9:40, you'll get your wetsuit on because your meeting is at 10 a.m. You want to get your wetsuit on, take your time, get down to the water, get in the water, do a few quick bursts, do some aqua jogging, maybe some stretching in the water. I find the water to be very calming, so for me personally, I spend more time in the water than out the morning of the race, but that's totally up to you. And then when 10 a.m. rolls around, you get out of the water and you're ready for your race meeting. All right? Okay, so there's all of that pre-race stuff. Now let's dive into the swim, bike, and run portions. So for the swim, you're going to be doing a 1 loop, quarter-mile distance. Okay? So you're going to start on the beach, you'll run into the water, there's going to be a dock on your right and some buoys on your left, so it's a little bit of a narrow start, but there's typically a smaller pool of people getting into the water with the sprint distance, so you shouldn't have too many people in the way. And if you are more confident swimming, then you're going to want to swim out fast, get way out in the front. If you're a little bit more naive or newer to the sport or newer to swimming, then you might want to stay towards the back, let everybody else kind of run out in front, and then get yourself in the water and get going. You can also stay right in the middle of the pack, and if you're a little bit more concerned or you want to just have some more space, stay to the sides and let everybody else kind of fight for position in the middle. That way you're still with everybody, but you're on the sides, so you're not worried about, being swum over or hitting somebody's elbow or something like that. Those kinds of things happen. Don't take it personally if it does. Everyone's just trying to get out there and start their day. Okay, so like I said, a little bit of a narrow start. You are going to run from the beach into the water to get yourself going, and then once you get back to the end, you're going to exit on the beach as well, run through the sand, and then you'll be on pavement, up a little bit of a hill into transition area, and that's your swim. So for a quarter-mile swim, I would recommend finding your rhythm early, getting your arms and your kick moving pretty quickly, and then once you get out into the water, you're comfortably 2 or 3 minutes into the water, find yourself a nice rhythm, all right? Nice long strokes, strong pulls. With triathlon, it's recommended that you don't use a really hard kick like you would in a pool swimming event, because you want to save your legs for the bike and the run, okay? Also, because it is an open water swim, you're going to make sure you're following the buoys and keeping them on your left, and you're going to utilize the buoys as sighting. So you're going to swim normally like you would, and then when you breathe to the side, you would come up and around, look out, see that buoy, and then keep going down. And just check every once in a while to make sure that you're not snaking too badly. And if you can, ideally, you're going to follow somebody who's hopefully going straight, and you can follow the bubbles of their feet, and that way you're right behind them, and you don't have to do as much work, both because you're drafting a little bit and because you're following them and you don't have to sight as often. All right? So like I said, once you get out of the swim, small little uphill to transition, and then you're into the transition area. You're going to grab your helmet, probably your sunglasses, make sure that your water bottles are still on your bike. If you're wearing bike shoes as opposed to run shoes, you're going to either have them already on the bike or you're going to put those on right in transition. Grab your bike and then head on to the course. Once you get on your bike, hopefully you left it from the morning warm-up in a really easy gear. That way you can easily start spinning the legs, get them used to being on a bike as opposed to in the water. You're going to go up a tiny little hill, and then the next 2.5 miles is downhill. Okay? Now this is the same downhill as the half and the Olympic. So like I talked about in those videos, the road can be a little bit bumpy. There can be frost heaves, cracks, things like that. And it is very steep for the first 2.5 miles. So just be aware of that, be careful. If you're riding a triathlon bike, if you're in the aero position, having your arms on the aero bars, or if you have clip-on aero bars on your road bike, just be very aware of where the bumps are and things like that. And because you don't have brakes on those, I would say it's probably a good idea to be in the hoods, where the bullhorns are of your bike, or on the outsides, so that you can use those brakes while you're descending. Because like I said, it is a very steep and a little bit bumpy of a descent. We want to make sure that everyone is safe. So unless you've ridden it before or driven it a couple times and you're very technical of a rider, I would recommend that you don't stay in the aero position as you descend, because it can be a little bit treacherous. Okay? Once you get to the bottom of that 2.5 mile hill, you're going to take a sharp right turn. Now again, I recommend that you drive the course or at least have ridden it a couple times beforehand. That way you can see what this turn looks like, because you're going to be coming in hot down the road, right? And then you've got to take a sharp turn. So you might need to go wider depending on how fast you're going. You don't want to cross over the yellow line and then go into traffic that's coming at you. Ideally, that's not going to happen. So make sure you slow down enough to be able to take the turn safely. You're going to want to check the day before to see how much dirt runoff there is, because if it rains, there could be a little bit of dirt on the side there, or any kind of gravel, potholes, things like that. So just make sure you know what that turn looks like ahead of time, and if you don't get the opportunity to do that, it's okay. Just be a little bit more cautious, go a little bit slower as you're entering the turn. Now from that 2.5 mile turn, you're then going to be going up until the end of the 7.2 mile loop. You're going to be taking another right turn onto Route 3, and then you're going to be going up that until you hit the bike path, at which point you're still going to be climbing, but you're just not going to be on a main road, so it'll be a closed bike path, which is kind of nice, and you can de-stress a little bit if you're worried about the cars passing you. That way you're on a nice, safe course. You're going to climb up that bike path all the way up and over the highway. There's an overpass, and then you'll go down back into transition area. There won't be any bike aid stations out on the course because it's a 7.25 mile loop. There will be aid at the transition area. So ideally during your swim or before your swim, you'll have taken a little bit of nutrition, maybe one gel or a goo or something like that. Do your swim, and then you'll have a bottle and maybe a gel or something taped to your bike. Again, we can talk about that more specifically in the transition video. And that way you don't need any kind of aid while you're on your bike because it's the 7.25 miles. When you get back to the transition area, should you feel like you need to get a little bit more energy or a little bit more sustenance, feel free to stop at that transition area aid station before heading out onto the run, because you will have another 1.2 miles until you get to your next aid station on the run course. Okay? So that's the bike in general. A couple quick tips as you're biking. For the downhill, like I said, be very careful. And then for the rest of the ride, it's important that you stay in an easier gear and keep your legs spinning quickly, because if you kind of trudge along, you're going to be using a lot of energy. Your muscles are going to be really tense, and that burns up a lot, and it leads more to cramps at the end of the race, just from general experience. So you're going to want to keep a higher cadence, keep those legs moving pretty quick. Stay seated as best you can, because the more stable your upper body is, the less energy you're burning, and the lower your heart rate will stay. So I know it is a long, egregious climb, right? But just keep moving. That's all you got to do. Keep thinking head forward, keep those legs moving, stay in an easier gear. Don't be afraid to drop if you have a 2 or 3 chain rings in the front, to drop down to 1 or 2 easier gears in the front right away, just to keep those legs moving, because a high cadence is going to lead to a more fun day and a more fun run. Okay? Alright, so now we're back to the transition area. You've dropped your bike off, taken the helmet off. We're going to take our run number, and if it's not already on your uniform, which it might be pinned, and that's good, if it's on a race belt, pick your race belt up, go ahead and clip it to you, and then get your run shoes on and begin the run. Now the run elevation is pretty flat for the most part. There are some rolling hills, but you're going to be rolling until about mile 1.6, at which point you'll have a gradual downhill for almost half a mile, about 0.4. And then from there, you're going to be going uphill until the finish. So from about mile 2 to mile 2.8 is going to be a gradual uphill. Okay? Now the actual run course is going to go from transition area out to the main road, take a right, and then going to go down the bike path around Echo Lake, at which point you'll be weaving through some parking lots and things like that near where the tramway is that you'll have seen should you have gone to the Summit Social the night before. Like I said, there's some rollers. I'll throw the elevation up there. And then once you get to around mile 2, you're going to be on a dirt path that's in the back half near Cannon Mountain, which is going to go up all the way to Peabody Lodge, and then you're going to go around Peabody Lodge and then up to the finish line. Okay? So if you do get to the part where there's a dirt road, you're going to see some ski lifts and things like that. Obviously they won't be operational because it's summertime, but there's not going to be a lot of people around, but don't feel like you're off course. Just keep plugging away, keep going straight up, and then you're within a mile of the finish at that point, so you'll just keep going up until you get to the Peabody Lodge. You'll see a bunch of people cheering, you go around that corner, and you'll be at the finish line. Okay? For the run aid stations, like I said before, it's at mile 1.2. There'll be some bananas, some gels, sometimes some juice, some Gatorade probably, some water, that kind of stuff, just to get some fluids and some nutrition in you if you need it. And yeah, so that's the sprint distance race. Big things to think about. If you are a beginner, there are other beginners out there, okay? So don't compare yourselves to other people. Don't worry about your time or your place or anything like that. The goal is to finish the race, to have a good time, to see where your base level is if this is your first triathlon, and to have fun. You know, we all do this because we want to enjoy ourselves. We want to push ourselves to a certain limit. This is a harder sprint race because of the amount of climbing that you have to do on the bike, especially with such a long sustained climb, so don't worry about it. If you've done a flatter course in the past, you're probably not going to reach the same average miles per hour or anything like that, but that's okay because it's a different race and you can never compare one to another, especially with the differing distances. So if anybody has any questions at all regarding the sprint distance, please feel free to shoot us an email at contact@thedavismethod.com. Like I said before, we'll be at the Summit Social the night before doing a little bit of a talk. I'm going to do a guided visualization of the day so that everyone can kind of see themselves go through the race process the night before, which I find gives people a lot of confidence and a lot of heightened ability the next day. And then we'll do a little Q&A and everyone will enjoy themselves and hit the sack early. All right, have a great night everybody, and we will see you soon. Looking forward to it. Happy training.